Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So this is a webinar about disability awareness and acceptance. One leads to the other, um, put on by the HCSS Counseling Department. So I'm Crystal Terrace, the Middle School Adjustment Counselor. We also have Mr. Avellino, the High School Counselor. So we will be talking to you today about disability awareness. So let's jump in. This presentation is being recorded, and so it will be posted on our website, and any questions or comments in the chat throughout the webinar. So feel free to send any questions to us through the chat, and we'll answer them at the end. So we'll just take a minute to think by starting off, what does the word disability mean to you? So everyone just take a second, think about that. When you think of the word disability, what does that mean for you? The ADA defines disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. A person who has a history or record of such an impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. So it's a little open-ended and open to interpretation. So another question is, do you or anyone you know live with a disability? So there are a lot of different types of there are 13 types that are defined in state and federal regulations. So some of the more common ones that we hear of are autism spectrum, impairments like deafness or blindness, neurological impairments, emotional impairments, communication, physical health, all kinds of things. And here are some statistics about disability in the world and in the United States. So about 240 million kids in the world live with a disability. That's about 10%. You might see some different numbers online. It seems to be between 10 and 15% of children have a disability worldwide. And then in the United States, about 7.3 million kids have a disability and also receive extra support at school, which we will talk about in a few minutes. But first, did you know that there are many kinds of different kinds of disabilities? And of course, not all of them are ones that you can see. So we're going to look at some famous people who live with various disabilities or other chronic conditions. This could be important because students can often feel alone or feel like other people, don't have the similar experiences to them. So let's learn about some people who live with disabilities who you or your child might just recognize. So a lot of you probably know Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things. She plays 11. So she actually has partial hearing loss in one ear. We have Lil Wayne, the rapper. He has epilepsy, which are seizures. So here's two well-known people. And we have a lot more here. So Kendrick Lamar, we have Billie Eilish, Lauren Ridloff, Magic Johnson. So take a look at these, see if there's anyone here that you recognize. Maybe you'll be surprised by some of these. And here's some more. We have Alicia Keys, Tom Holland, Ariana Grande. So all different kinds of people and all different kinds of, disabilities or other conditions that they live with, that you might be surprised by. So students with disabilities have legal rights in school. So these are just some examples of some of the legal acts and things that protect students with disabilities. So we have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. We have Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and then a couple other ones here. that protect students in school and make sure that they are getting the same education as everybody else. So there are some things when a student might be eligible for special education. Not all students with disabilities require special education, but many also do. So we look at these three criteria to see if they do qualify for support in school. So if they have one or more disabilities, if they're not making effective progress in school as a result of those disabilities, and if they require special education in order to make effective. Some basic principles of special education. So parents and students have the right to participate in decisions that are made by the school about the student's education. All students need to have access to a free and appropriate public education. So that can mean different things for different students, depending on the situation. But all students are entitled to their education. Appropriate evaluation, so getting the right evaluations to figure out if a student does need support. And that could look like an IEP, the individualized education program. Students can be placed in the least restrictive environment, so giving them the most independence possible in their education, and procedural safeguards. So things like if there are, if families disagree with a school's decision, they can, appeal these things. They can, and that goes back to the parent and student participation. Parents are involved in it and can, have some say in everything. And we'll switch it over to Mr. Avellino.
All right. Hi, everybody. For this part of the presentation, I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to talk to your child about disabilities. These are just different tactics, or not tactics, I would say, just different things to keep in mind when speaking to either your student or child about disabilities, as it is a normal part of life, but speaking on it and making sure that people are aware and being accepting can be, something that you have to make sure you keep in mind and that you're cognizant of. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things to keep in mind when you're speaking with a student or anybody, honestly, about disabilities, but particularly with students, especially children. First off, utilizing their curiosity. So as we all know, children are very naturally curious about the world and their surroundings. They're going to ask questions, right? So it's up to you as the adult to make sure to use their questions as opportunities to talk about learning about differences, talking about respecting differences, and how with anybody with disabilities of normalizing it, which we'll get into in a second. But basically, you want to utilize their curiosity to your advantage and just encourage them to be curious, but while also being respectful and aware of differences or disabilities in other individuals or other children. A helpful tip to keep in mind in terms of making sure that you're respecting people within individuals with disabilities is using people first language. So you would say something along the lines of, oh, they have a disability versus saying something like they're disabled. People first language is very important because it shows both children and other people, right? It shows that the disability is only one aspect to the person and is not their defining trait, and they are an individual outside of that disability. So it's always usually helpful to model that, especially with when talking to students and children about saying, they have a disability versus they're disabled. Again, showing that it's only one aspect to them and not their defining trait. Next slide. Again, continuing how to talk to your child about disabilities. Being direct and honest. Of course, your child might have a question or two, or maybe several, that maybe you don't exactly know at the moment how to respond to, or how to answer. So any question that you do have knowledge of, obviously, answer it directly, right? Be honest with them and focus on, facts, right? The things that you do know about the disability or what it entails. You want to be upfront with them, though, again, modeling and normalizing, right? You want to be upfront with the kid on info that you do not know, right? And this would be, again, a perfect opportunity to learn more, right? You want to make sure that you're being honest with them, letting them know, okay, this is something that I don't know, but how about it's something we learn more about together, right? So not only can it be an opportunity to, demonstrate respect and being honest, but also as a further opportunity to learn more so that both you and the child are more knowledgeable about whatever disability or whatever question they have in question, basically. Yep. Avoid assumptions. This one is really big too. You want to make sure that, again, you don't try to talk on the person's feelings or their experiences. We don't want to assume, right? Unless you have firsthand info, right? I'll get into this a little bit later, but basically, if at all possible, you would want to have the person with the disability, right? If the child is directly asking them a question or something like that, you want to basically to lead, basically let them say what their experiences are or what their feelings are or how they manage it, right? Whatever you do, you typically want to avoid, talking as if you know what they're going through exactly, right? Or if you know exactly what they're experiencing, it can lead to a little bit of trouble and miscommunication. So it's usually always better to avoid assumptions when you can, focus on the facts that you do know, and if possible, have firsthand information about what they're experiencing or feeling or going through living with this disability, if it's a question your child has. We can move on to next. So I alluded to this earlier, but for role modeling and normalization, two huge factors in terms of talking with your children and students about disabilities, right? Again, kids copy behaviors and attitudes, right? We all know this. They learn and they pick up on astoundingly a lot, actually. So it's always best for you to be the role model in a situation and just let them know about what you do or do not know. Kids copy behaviors, especially with new and unfamiliar circumstances. They're going to be looking to you for guidance on anything new or anything surprising that they might experience, right? So since they pick up on everything, you want to try your best to be a role model of acceptance and understanding. And again, leading into other things that I said earlier, being direct, being honest, making sure to say stuff like, I don't know when it's true, and then saying that's something we can totally find out together. So lead by example, basically be the adult of the situation. If you role model acceptance and understanding for children and individuals with disabilities, it's more likely that your child will follow. And like I said earlier, normalize, right? We want to basically able to teach our kids that differences and disabilities are actually 100% normal, right? And we want to expand their definitions of what normal means to them. Whatever you do, you don't want them to be considered like, treating, you don't want children treating disabilities as something like, it's other or wrong or they're doing something bad. Stuff like that, obviously you want to avoid. And again, that works if you normalize it for the child. Say that's a totally normal thing that happens and it's just something that they have to, accept, learn more about, of course, and get used to as a normal facet of life. So again, leading by example and normalization are two very big factors in terms of teaching our children about acceptance with individuals with disabilities and learning more about them. Next slide. Okay, so we actually have a little bit of a, I would say, example situation / thought experience, right? Or thought experiment here in terms of what you can do in case something like this happens or it's something that you're exposed to as you work with your child and or student. So imagine you're at the grocery line and your child notices that a bagger has one arm. They start asking the person direct questions, right? The person in question does not seem to be bothered at all and begins talking with your child about their questions, referencing either their disability or just speaking about their experience, like I said, firsthand information, right? So a couple of tips to keep in mind here, if this or a similar situation happens, right? As I said before, let the individual with the disability lead, right? Again, we're utilizing the child's curiosity. We're letting them, like, ask questions. And that's all fine and good. And if the person, again, does not seem bothered, you want them to be basically the expert in the situation since you're getting firsthand information here. Let them speak on their experience. Let them, engage with your child. The only thing I would say is obviously allow the child's curiosity, but you have every right as the parent or adult in the situation, right, to step in if you feel that the child is being a little bit like, overbearing or being rude or disrespectful. Then obviously you want to step in and just lightly, like, politely let them know about respect and accepting differences. But otherwise, if this person is totally engaging with the kid and they are seemingly, like, unbothered by it and answering their questions truthfully and honestly, I would like you would probably be it would be a good idea for you, right, to let the moment sit just like that, right? And then use the moment afterwards to teach your child more if they have either follow-up questions or thoughts on the matter. This is what I mean by using the opportunity, right? If the opportunity is ever presented to you where you have an individual with a disability speaking openly and freely, not only does that allow your kid to get more information from firsthand sources, but it also, again, goes to the role modeling and normalization I talked about earlier, right? You're normalizing it by not making, like, a huge deal on it or just saying like, oh my God, like this is something new for you. You're basically just saying this is something that happens and allowing the child's curiosity while also letting them, the person with a disability, let them know exactly how they feel or what they're going through, or just honestly answering the questions that your child may have. Again, utilize their curiosity, use it as a teachable moment, and then obviously let the person with the disability lead if in case you are not unaware, but you don't know much about it. Let the person talk for you, let them lead if you're ever in a situation similar to this. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of for school, right? Your child, of course, will be exposed to students with disabilities in school and in any school setting, right? This is why role modeling and speaking with them on respecting differences is crucially important. Again, the children are usually looking, even if we don't always see it, right? They're usually looking to the adults for guidance on whether they admit it or not, in terms of new situations or treating anybody, or when they learn about new things or unfamiliar circumstances, they will be looking to us, right? So this is why we have to role model and speak with them on respecting differences and accepting and normalizing different situations. Schools have many resources, as Ms. Terrace talked about earlier, for students with disabilities to access the general education curriculum, usually led by a special services coordinator or a similar position within the school. They are a great resource for more information, and this is especially crucial for parents who are considering special services for their children. As we mentioned before, we want every child to be able to access the curriculum in the least restrictive environment as possible. So we always work on an individual basis with it. And that's why if you have in your school a school special service coordinator or a position like that, that would be the people to get in touch with in terms of accessing special services for your children. School counselors, of course, are also a great resource. They can assist, as we're doing now, of course, right, with disability awareness and encouraging students to respect others, as well as helping with special services. If there's anything that for a parent of a student and you have a school counselor in their school, anything that you're either uncomfortable with speaking with your child about or just need more help with, school counselors would be a very good resource to help. It's literally in our nature and our job to help with this. So school counselors would also be a great resource in terms of normalization, acceptance, and just increasing respect. Next slide. And again, just getting educated, learning more is always a good option, right? So here on this slide, you can see a couple of some of the websites and stuff that we used for this presentation. I believe they will be made available to you afterwards, but you can always hit up these sites. A very good one is, of course, the government one, Americans with Disabilities Act. Reading up on it, it's actually more user-friendly than I anticipated. So it would be a great website to start. And then others in terms of getting more information or just how to speak to your child about it. Here are some of the works cited and resources we used for this presentation. So it will be made available for you afterwards. And next. And I believe, Ms. Terrace, if it's okay, this is the presentation here. So I want to thank everybody for their time. I wanted to see if there was any questions or comments. I'll be looking at the chat real quick. Anything to add, Ms. Terrace?
No, I don't see any comments in the chat currently, but if anybody does have any, you can go ahead and send those now and we'll go ahead and answer those. Thank you everyone for coming. I don't see any questions right now, so I think we can wrap up. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions or anything that you think of later on.
Thank you, everybody.